Welcome to the Data Product Management in Action podcast, created and executive produced by me, Scott Hirleman, and brought to you by Soda, your best friend in data quality and contracts tooling. We created this podcast to serve as a place for actual practitioners bringing product management practices to data, whether that is to AI and ML, data products, platforms, or everything else in data, right? And it's to dig into the nitty-gritty of product management in data, but in fun and dynamic conversations. It's not just lift and shift from software product management. We have a great set of hosts for you that are also practitioners, so they can really get into those specifics and dive deep and get you the information you want to know rather than just high level, here is what a data product is. This is about cutting through the noise of data product management to drive towards actionable insights, hence the actual podcast name, Data Product Management in Action. So sit back and enjoy another awesome conversation. Your host today is Frannie Helforoush, Technical Product Manager of the Data Platform and Data Product Manager at RBC Global Asset Management. A reminder that all hosts and guests are only representing their own views.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Data Product Management in Action podcast. I'm your host, Frannie Helforoush, and today we are going to have an exciting conversation with lovely guest, Jill Maffeo. Jill has a lot of experience in both software product management and data product management, and today we are going to mostly focus on team structure and product teams versus data teams and a lot more. Quick disclaimer here, Jill is representing her own view and is not representing the views of her company. So please welcome Jill Maffeo. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Frannie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation. So let's just start with a quick introduction of yourself, your product, and your current role.
Sure. So my name is Jill Maffeo. I came up in analytics and I've spent about 10 years of my career in that space. That eventually transitioned into data product management. And then that moved into customer-facing product management with a data team component. So I currently work for Vista. The one thing to know about that company for the context of the podcast is we sell a lot of customizable products. And when someone is going through that process on our website, they typically need to design those products in order to check out. So that will come up later. In my previous data product management role at Vista, I worked more in the channel platform enablement space. And I also worked on some of the marketing measurement and share of search measurement spaces. So that was a really interesting connection to the current product that I'm on of site search, because we had a lot of interesting overlaps with taxonomy development, the understanding of query data from paid search, organic search to site search. And so that leap brought me from a data team of about 2 to 3 data engineers, 2 to 3 data product analysts, again, very focused in this marketing measurement and enablement space, to a team of about 13 with a variety of roles on the team. Those folks are across software. I have an engineering product lead and an engineering manager. I work with an architect. I also have a UX partner. And I am one of the very lucky teams to have a data component on that team as well, with a couple of data engineers, a data product analyst, and a data scientist. So we have the whole mix, and it's a really good group. And it's helped me see a lot of the parallels in the data team management and product management space, but also some of the differences. And the jump from working with about 5 to 6 people to working with about 13 with two time zones versus 3 time zones has also been a jump for me and a really interesting transition.
So you are a real bridge between product and data, because we usually say that the data product manager should be a bridge between the data world and product world, but you're actually honestly doing it, and that is very exciting. I know when it comes to data product management, there are lots of unanswered questions and challenges. But there are like some of them are also common with software product management. Like in general, product is not easy. And of course, one of them is team structure. And you mentioned you went from a small team to a very big team. Um, and I just wanted to ask you, what are the challenges you have right now, and or had in the past, and what has been working for you before that it's not working right now, or vice versa?
I can comment a little bit about managing like a group of 13 and also like some of the ways that work prioritization, work strategy is different, and areas where they're the same. So people are people. So I love working with groups from all over. In Vista, we have offices globally, and in the past, I had also worked as an analyst in the customer service space, our care department, and we have a vast variety of folks chiming in from all offices talking about like our customer issues, customer friction. And so I have experience working across many time zones from the Philippines to Australia to India to Montego Bay. Uh, so getting back into that mindset after having a team that was mostly US and European based was interesting. So there's a lot of overlaps from a timing perspective to manage, a real critical look on who needs to be in which meetings and when, a big difference in the amount of kind of deep thinking time that I need to actively prioritize versus having my afternoons to myself. So these are things from like a team management perspective that I've been working through with my leads and working through with the team. That and the number of people. So I tend to run a team that does focus on culture, and a lot of that culture is based on personal relationships, conversations, and having one-on-ones with folks on the team was manageable with 6. Um, having one-on-ones all the time with folks on the team when it is 13 gets a little bit challenging. So, how do you build a culture that, necessitates spending less time individually with each person? So I really indexed when I first came onto the team, investing in those relationships because it helped me get up to speed and it helped build trust. Now that I have a little bit more of that social capital with the team, we can have more conversations about how much time needs to be spent for them to kind of get to know me, for them to give me feedback, for them to buy on strategy. So it's been a work in progress, but I've had to shift that time around to find more of the deep thinking time. When I think about the ways in which a data team works versus a software team with a full complement of leads, which again, lucky to have, not everybody does, in the data team space, one of the other reasons why I did a lot of one-on-ones is because there's less redundancy on the team in terms of skill sets. So when you have 5 engineers that are all software engineers, you would expect in some capacity, aside from focuses like front end or back end, but you would expect in some capacity that they are working all towards pulling from a backlog of tickets, either in Kanban or Scrum, right? And that anyone on those teams should be able to pull from that backlog. When you're in a data team, you're not always working with people that have the same skill sets, as at the numbers that you would in a software engineering squad. So meeting with folks one-on-one was very important because you have a better understanding of what the data engineers are up to, and then also what the data product analysts are up to. There's more of a say in strategy and then alignment. And I didn't have a particular set of leads, with the exception of my engineering manager when I was in data product management. It was more of a team effort, with me probably setting more of the strategy, but the team having a lot more input in my ear. Moving into a team that's 13, moving into a team with a full complement of leads, and moving into a team that has a software component has been really interesting. Again, speaking of where I distribute the one-on-one time, I do need to speak with my data product analyst more often because she is the only data product analyst. And so she is working on something very specific, and we are talking about what those tickets are, we're refining them, as opposed to being in a larger 60-minute, 90-minute refinement meeting with 5 software engineers. Like, we use our one-on-one time for some of that. So for the data folks, I do spend a little bit more time individually. And then with the software folks, I tend to spend more individual time when there's projects that are spiking or things that they need my help on, whether that's because of my analytics background. I still dabble in Snowflake. I still dabble in metric development. That still makes me happy. Or if there's, again, a decision that they need from me, that's where I spend more of the time there, and then lean on my engineering product lead to bridge the gap with the time that I can't always spend one-on-one. The data folks aren't yet pointing tickets. The engineers do regularly. They kind of all weigh in on that. And we are working right now in 2-week sprints. Again, there's more information about velocity from the software engineering side. It's still a little bit a work in progress on the data side in terms of if we want to measure that, how we want to do that, if they should be Kanban. But we are learning across both of the teams' best practices and sharing them together.
That is great. Thank you so much. Um, I always hear that people are saying that although they do Scrum, they're always saying that in data teams, Kanban works better. So we personally also do Scrum, so I don't know if Kanban works better, but that's a comment that I hear very often from people. Um, so I know that you're also trying to implement the product trio. I don't think you call it product trio. I think you call it something else. But in general, product trio is a term that Teresa Torres comes up with. So people are using other terms usually, but the concept is the same, and that is when like the your product team is comprised of a product manager, designer, and software engineer, and these three roles at a minimum are required to create good digital products. What is your experience with that, and how do you come up with who comes from the data perspective, and who comes from, because we have at least one more role in that equation, and that is data. So some software they have a designer, some they don't, if they are focusing on data, but I think you have all. So how do you manage that?
It's a hot topic, and not just for my team. We actually just kicked off a PM guild a couple months ago, and this was a recent topic there as well. And what we figured out kind of in that touch base with the other PMs is that while it is talked about often as a product trio or a product triad, the amount of leads that people are working with varied greatly. In a lot of data teams, a lot of people consider it to be two, whether that's a lead data engineer or a data scientist or the engineering manager. And then the rest of the team collectively develops strategy or prioritizes work with the product manager. But in some of the software spaces where you would expect there to be a full kind of that triad, um, it's still either not always three. If there's a platform team, they don't always have UX, or it may be more than three, which is the case in our team. We have an engineering product lead, we have a UX person on the team, we have an engineering manager, and then myself as the PM. So that was 4. That was kind of our core group. We were working very closely probably in the first 6 months when I was on the team, to develop that culture, get some quick wins out the door, understand kind of like the customer experience in search, and get up to speed on also all of the back end of search and what the terminology is, where the health of the data was. And at that point, I was meeting very closely with the data folks as individuals. And then the engineering manager was also helping shape kind of the roadmap in the data space. As we hit January, we added someone else to the leads equation. We are now also working with an architect. And this is a really critical point for us because we are thinking about what it takes to build kind of the next iteration of our search experience and what that takes technically. So we are going through a lot of technical discovery right now to figure out the direction. And again, once we do that, the architecture and infrastructure will need. So we now have an architect in the space. That's 5, 3 of which are technology roles. So we will be having a conversation about roles and responsibilities with our agile coach, just to make sure we have clear decisions from the team being made, instead of kind of, are we in consensus? Is this an area where we need to be in consensus? Is there an area where somebody is the decision maker? Who is that decision maker? Again, especially as we're in this very heavy discovery space, we need to be aligned on the direction and who is leading there. So that is a partnership. We are working through it. It's great to have an architect on board. We are figuring out how to add them into the culture, how to learn from them. So it's a work in progress. As we consider the role of data in this kind of path moving forward in search, we are also asking ourselves whether or not one of our lead data engineers should be coming to some of our specific leads meetings more often. So we go back and forth because that is 6, and that is a lot, as I had mentioned before. There is a lot of good things about having people from all different areas of the team involved in strategy setting, because we do get perspectives from all sides. There is also, again, working through the kind of the decision ownership piece, making sure we're not in a too many cooks in the kitchen situation, and also kind of not getting stuck in a too long informing again, right? Because we need to build deep trust. We need to have candid conversations, and adding people incrementally month to month. Like, are we in a good place to do that? Are we healthy enough to do that? So these are conversations that we're working through right now. Um, I think we are lucky in a lot of ways, as I'd mentioned before, to have the full complement. We're just trying to figure out the best way to employ that towards strategy and discovery.
That is very interesting. I really love that you're experimenting, adding more leads to that product trio, because the three is a minimum. You can always add, but then it comes with the pros and cons. Like, you have more leads, but then at the same time, it's so hard to manage all of the opinions and ideas at the same time. And then on the other side, all of them except for product and UX lead are technical. And then you two, like product manager and the UX lead, are the only one that have a connection with business or with the users and customers, right? Which is not like total balance. So you guys should be a little bit louder sometimes, I'm guessing. So yeah, I can imagine the challenges there. But that's great that you're experimenting, and I'm loving it.
One of the things I've also found about being in a team like this that has a lot of technical expertise and a lot of technical leadership. When I was in the data space, I was very technical in that space. And so we were kind of a technical group of folks setting strategy that was data focused, and it was really in my lane. Also, I had a lot of kinship with the analysts in the team because I had been one for 10 years. Moving really fully into this product space, which is where I want to go in my career, has had really interesting implications in the way that I think about peer relationships, because it can also be lonely to be the only person on the team in your function. It can be lonely sometimes for UX, or lonely for product, or maybe lonely for the one data product analyst. And so the one thing I would say about that, in order to give yourself a little bit of confidence as well, that your point of view is valid in a room that sometimes, can get loud. I mean, we are doing pretty well. But I think part of that is because I have people in the product space that I can gut check myself and my personal opinions with, so that when I bring them to the table, like, it's not only me, just like there's multiple technologists at the table. Like, I've checked in with product partners. My UX partner is very much connected to the UX community. So, yeah, that is definitely a move from the data space where I felt much more connected to kind of the technical hands on work. I started moving away from that a little bit when I went from just being a manager of analysts to also managing the work for data engineers, and have had to take a further step back and really remind myself to be in my role, to not get caught up in not knowing all of the technical intricacy of things, but also to use my product peers to give me confidence to be in that space.
That's a great advice to whoever is in the same position as yours. Speaking of lonely, I know that there are data product managers that are reporting to a data lead, which makes them really lonely because everyone are from data world in that team, including the manager, but then there's only one product focused person in that team. So who do you think a product or a data product manager should report to? A CPO or a data leader?
It's a good question. Right now, we have a little bit of both. So we have an organization that has someone who was previously the CDO took on also the engineering component of the company when product split out and became product and UX as opposed to product managers and software engineering teams. So we have a product and UX organization in the company under a CPO, and we now have a data component and an engineering component underneath someone who leads our technology space. Um, when that organizational change happened, some data product managers, like myself, moved directly into the product org. Some of those folks either moved into teams that required more analytical leadership or had data team components. For some of the folks who didn't move, they were kind of in two different spaces. One, working in more of the data products that may not have as deep of a connection to some of the software engineering needs that maybe a backend system or a customer facing product has. So, for instance, a product on my old team was looking at market demand, and we were ingesting a lot of information from third party vendors and then transforming that into a data product to read where the market was going in the product categories or our competitors. Um, could we have used a software engineer to help us build a tool? Would that have been super neat? Yes, but that kind of work wasn't as reliant on some of that crossover with software engineering, and we were pretty independent in our space with being data forward. Having leaders who are in the data space and who are trying to work with marketing and talk to them about measurement, kind of new ways of thinking about measurement, especially for upper funnel spend, like was beneficial because they're seen as experts, right? And so that was something that helped us gain some traction. But at the same time, we were a little bit further from strategy, which can kind of catch a team off guard if all of a sudden, hey, we're doing a bunch of upper funnel spend. Cool. We heard you. We're going to try to build some measurement. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we may pull back. And it's like sometimes we got that signal and sometimes we didn't. Right. So there are those kinds of teams where being led by people who are seen as experts can get you a specific kind of capital in the business. Some of the other folks are more like enablement and platform teams. So they are enabling the product organization engineers. So data or not, they could be focused on building systems that deploy code faster or, provide better documentation faster to help the kind of system run better. Those kinds of teams as well, like from a technical perspective, it can be good to have some technical ownership, especially if that's the team that owns usually like a lot of the costs for the organization. So when you have direct connection to that, you can give much more input to strategy on why we should be investing in this vendor or reducing cost here. And those teams have a lever then to go out to their partners in the product organization and say, we're changing the way that we do this process because of XYZ, and that's coming from our leadership. While having those experts and those connections to the folks who own things like vendor relationships is good, I'll go back to the point I made before is that sometimes those teams can feel a little bit disconnected from strategy. And also sometimes those those cuts are made in a little bit of an arbitrary way where it's like, hey, here's a team that's going to, you know, independently from a data perspective, build all information about sales data. And it's going to be a critical piece of information, and there's going to be reporting on that, and that's a data product. But there's also a team that runs cart, or there's also a team that runs inventory. And technically, all the data that that data team is using is being produced by those teams. So if there is a complementary team in the product organization where a strong partnership with the data team could get data needs heard, but also get strategy into the hands of data folks. Again, my team is lucky where we have a data product team and a product component. And I came from an analytical background. So we have a really good balance, right? If we can get more teams that have buy in to be producing cleaner data, buy in to produce data products, but also have a software engineering component, I think that's where you get a lot of kind of force multiplying, because then you get really clean data products that can either be consumed by the team who is producing the data to measure their own performance or by the rest of the organization. So for me, I guess there are reasons to have folks reporting in to more technical leadership, but those reasons have to be very, very clear. And if that is the case, those teams still need to be very connected into strategy. And they can't kind of be divorced from their own consumers, which is usually the product organization, for data products on metrics, for tooling to facilitate coding, et cetera.
I totally agree with you. And I think that was the best answer I heard about this so far. So we will quote you. Don't worry from now on. Um, okay. Thank you so much for that point of view. Um, I think this is my last question before we go to the final thoughts. Is there any um, team metrics or process metrics that you follow to align your team? And is there any example about that that you want to share?
Yes. So, coming from an analytics background, I have a real passion for kind of measuring and monitoring some of our key performance indicators or our KPIs, and also trying my best to pick ones that represent the key results for the team. When I was first joining the team, I was able to work from a lot of previous good work from other PMs in the space that they had done on discovery. We kind of knew what our next steps were. They were pretty clear. I was able to work with the team on what that KR should be. We were looking at an overall click through rate. So when someone searches and then they click on a search result, that would count towards our key result. It didn't matter if they were clicking on something that is a product, maybe a help center article, maybe an open order. We serve a lot of things in search right now. So it didn't really matter where they were clicking, but that they clicked. So that was a really important metric. We actually did quite well in our first quarter. Again, I chalk it up to having a lot of things left to me by good PMs before. But having also that like confidence of like, okay, I picked a good metric. I'm coming from an analytics background. I can totally do this. Led me into our next quarter. And I was like, okay, a lot of the work that we're going to be producing in this quarter is focused on improving the product search component of site search. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take a look at the data. I'm going to see where that was at. I'm going to set my X's and Y's, right? That I should be able to shift product click through rate from this particular percent to this particular percent. What's my lift going to be? What's reasonable? And I did my best, but there were a couple things that I learned along the way. Some were just good reminders, some were unexpected. For instance, our quarter over quarter data was not great, was messy. It was missing a lot of clicks. Our customers during this very specific period of time, so our holiday time period, were actually much more interested in other sections of the page than product, just by virtue of the kind of customer that shows up that time of year. So they're much more focused on design, opening up in project, in progress customer work. If you think about custom print material and the holiday time period, people are making calendars. They're not going to do that in one setting. They probably come back, they use search, they want to open that again. Also, the page changes that we were making to elevate product had unintended consequences and shifted some of the other sections around. And so it was this perfect storm of, even if we had done things to improve product search, it wouldn't have mattered because customers weren't really coming to us for product at that time. Uh, the data that we were looking at, even if we had looked at it by section, wouldn't have been accurate because it was a bit messy. And the major lesson learned really is that, it doesn't really matter what you are prioritizing. It matters what the customers want. So even if, again, we had knocked product search out of the park, it may not have mattered at all. So from Q2 moving forward, we were like, all right, learned a couple things. Didn't meet that KR, but because we had gone into the quarter with companion metrics to our KR, which sidebar always have companion level metrics. Like, you're going to incentivize the wrong thing if you just look at one metric. For instance, if you want to raise your sales and you heavily discount, you will cut your profits, right? So always have a secondary metric. So we were looking at product click-through rate. We were also taking a look at overall click-through rate and also customers who were engaging with product and designs, making it through the design stage. So they had successfully moved forward, made a decision, were in progress with a project. So while we were seeing that product click-through rate was going down, we also saw that overall click-through rate was relatively stable, as was made it rate. And so we were concerned, but we weren't panicked. We did a deep dive, and then we learned a lot more about our customer behavior during that period of time. And for the most part, have kept our data pretty clean since then. And it's been a much higher priority in the team because now they're all invested in the metrics as well. And they want to do well. And in order to do well, you have to know kind of where you were, what customers were doing, and how they did, which means data that you're capturing right now could either help you or come back to bite you next year this time. So making sure that the KR that you're looking at is something that, based on the customers you're working with and the work you're doing, but also previous patterns, all makes sense, instead of just saying, like, this is what I'm working on and this is what I can impact, because that was definitely a learning experience for me, and something that we've kind of moved forward with, both in the clean our data and also in the new metrics development space. Back to my analytics roots. Like, is click-through rate actually the best metric for us? It is right now because we don't have things like relevancy, but we want to work towards that because we think that that's better, right? Search satisfaction, we think that that's better. We just don't have it today. So this is a really good reminder as well that proxy metrics are proxies. Like, they are more attuned to customer behavior in this case than actual customer forward progress, customer satisfaction, relevant products. So cleaning that data, getting better metrics, keeping all of the metrics that we look at in context, and focus on customer needs, not only the work. This was definitely a big one for me, and one I will continue to remind myself of every time I have to set new KRs, which here is quarterly.
This is a great example of lesson learned. And also, I really like that you touch on with that example, touch on everything like customer needs, customer behavior, and data driven decisions, like where to focus, product metrics, like everything was in that example. So I really love it. Thank you so much for sharing it. Any final thoughts? Any last word of wisdoms to share?
I guess I'll mention two things. One thing I kind of skipped over before when I was talking about my leads, and then I'll close out and leave you to it. So the one awesome thing about having a full complement of leads on a team that is across data and tooling and front end is that we are stretching our leads across spaces and stretching our strategy in ways that I wasn't able to do in the teams that I was running before. So, for instance, we are building an internal tool for our partners and our merchandising teams and our operations teams to tag objects on the back end, like tag banners with the use case of trade show, right? So that ranks better in our search results. And so we are building a tool to do that. And we have a UX partner on the team. And it is my first time as a product manager. I've been an analyst on a squad with UX before, but it's my first time as a product manager working with a UX lead. And I kind of went into it making the assumption that maybe tooling wouldn't be interesting for her, or that, we would have commitments otherwise that needed to take priority. But she was really interested. And she was like, I think we should run customer interviews, even if I can only spend an afternoon on this. Like, let's set you guys up for success. So using a UX designer and tooling, like, that is a huge win. Also thinking about where I was before in data product management without a software engineering team, like, we were building dashboards. And so people would come and they would be able to look at data, they would get insights, maybe we were sending alerts, maybe we were getting a little bit more sophisticated in that space. And then I also used to work with software engineers that built tools. And those tools were, hey, you come to this tool and you take an action because some other tool or some other dashboard or some other strategy told you that you needed to take this action. And those were very specific separate lines. Software engineers work on tools, data product analysts and data product engineers worked on dashboards. Now I have both components in my team, and I am very excited to start getting to a place where instead of someone going to a dashboard and then going to our tool, they are going to one place that is helping them make decisions based on data and showing them what to optimize and where to do it. So we're not there yet, but this is an opportunity that I really want to take advantage of because we do have both components on the team and I prioritize their time. So getting to actual data-driven tooling is something that is kind of like it's a wish for me. It's a hope for this team. So we'll see. We are in progress on both of those things. We just have to get them closer together. So that's just like a plug for some maybe non-traditional leads being in a space where we've really tried to make the most of that. And, you can get some really interesting things when you add some folks to a team that maybe you normally wouldn't. So we're very excited for that. We're trying to take full advantage. And the last thing I would say is I'm always looking to connect with other search PMs. It's a very fast changing space. It's a very interesting space. And it also bridges that data and product and kind of software engineering juncture in neat ways. So if you are interested in connecting, you can find my LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to message back and forth.
That is great. Thank you so much. I really always enjoy talking with you. It's lots of wisdom, lots of experience, and thank you so much for sharing all of them. We will link your LinkedIn for sure to this episode. So if anyone wants to find you, they will. And thank you so much for coming to the podcast and having this episode with us.
Thank you, Frannie. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully you got some great actionable insights out of this episode. We're so excited to dig deeper into data product management and its many facets. If you want to engage more with the show, you can follow us on LinkedIn and check out Soda's website at soda.io for more related content around product management in data. And if you are a practitioner bringing product management practices to data and want to potentially be a guest, please check the show notes for a link to apply. And as always, we strongly encourage people from underrepresented groups in tech to apply. Much as I'm a handsome devil, we don't want all our guests only looking like me. So again, let's get excited for more digging into data product management in action.